The NFL is full of bad contracts, but these five might be the biggest overpays in football. And some of these players are still really good, but when you look at their production compared to what they're getting paid, it's kind of hard to justify. So let's break down the five worst contracts heading into 2026. First up, TJ Hawkinson, a 4-year, $66 million contract. And honestly, when the Vikings gave Hawkinson this extension back in 2023, I didn't think there was any issue with it. He was coming off another Pro Bowl season. He was one of the better receiving tight ends in football, and locking him up seemed like an obvious move. But you fast forward that a couple years and this contract has aged pretty bad. Since the start of the 2024 season, Hawkinson has just scored 3 touchdowns and hasn't even reached 500 yards receiving in either of the last 2 seasons. That's not the kind of production you want from someone making elite tight end money. And what really stands out is, despite those numbers, Hawkinson enters the 2026 season with the highest cap hit among all tight ends. Minnesota already reworked his contract earlier this year, so there really isn't much flexibility left. And to be fair, injuries have played a role, and if he gets back to the player we saw a few years ago, this contract could look a little bit better, but even then, it's kind of hard to justify those big numbers. Next, we got Nick Bosa. 5 years, $100 million extension. This is one of the hardest ones to put on this list because we're talking about a former defensive player of the year. When the 49ers gave Bosa that deal back in 2023, it was well deserved. He looked like one of the most dominant defensive players in football, but since then, things haven't gone according to plan. The production has dipped, injuries have been more of a concern, and he missed almost the entire 2025 season. Now, when it comes to his contract, Bosa's cap hit sits at $23 million this year, but that number nearly doubles to $55 million in 2027, and that's because how the deal is structured. San Francisco really doesn't have an easy way out, and moving on would cost them a ton of money. So the 49ers are basically betting that Bosa can return to being that game-changing pass rusher we saw a few years ago. DK Metcalf. Now, this one isn't just about the money, it's everything Pittsburgh invested to make this happen. 4 years, $132 million. Back in 2025, the Steelers traded a second-round pick to Seattle for Metcalf. They were betting he'd be their true number 1 receiver. But the part that really gets me, around the same time, they decided they were done with George Pickens. There were reports about concerns with his maturity, consistency. So instead of paying Pickens, they doubled down on Metcalf. And to be real with you, I don't get the move at all. You're letting go of a younger receiver to pay more for an older one with some of the same concerns. And then the 2025 season happened. Metcalf finished with just 850 receiving yards, the lowest total of his career. And for Pickens, he went to Dallas and went off. So not only did the Metcalf gamble not pay off, the guy they walked away from proved them wrong at the same time. Now he's entering 2026 with a $31 million cap hit, and now Pittsburgh had to go out and trade for Michael Pittman Jr. to patch things up at the position. Pittsburgh does have a cleaner path to move on after this season if things don't improve, but this is a prove-it year for DK Metcalf, because if he puts up another season like last year, this contract is going to be super questionable. Moving on to Chris Godwin, and honestly, this one's just unfortunate because when Godwin is healthy, he's one of the better receivers in football. The problem is staying healthy. He's now failed to play double-digit games in back-to-back seasons, and even when he has been on the field, the production just hasn't looked like the Chris Godwin we're used to seeing. Godwin is carrying the highest cap hit of any receiver in football this year at $33.7 million. That's a massive number for a player who can't stay on the field. Tampa is hoping he can get healthy and back to Pro Bowl form, or at least a reliable piece in that offense. If not, a decision will be made at the end of the season. And then there's TJ Watt, over $40 million a year, $94 million total over the next 2 seasons. I'm not saying Watt isn't still a really good player, because he is. The concern isn't the player, it's the direction things are heading. His sack numbers have gone from 19 in 2023 to 11.5 in 2024 to just 7 last season. It's solid production for most edge rushers, but TJ Watt isn't being paid like most edge rushers. He's being paid to be one of the most dominant defensive players in football. It's a big investment for a player whose numbers are trending in the wrong way, and on a defense who has still yet to win a single playoff game. Now, I know there's other players who probably could have made this list, but these 5 contracts stood out the most to me. So let me know in the comments which player has the worst contract heading into 2026. If you liked the video, feel free to give it a like, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.